I'm TM Gaouetter. Welcome back to Faith Through Fiction. This month we're discussing a big teen struggle, one that affects all of us at some point or other in our lives, and for many of us it's a difficult agony to overcome. The struggle is loss. Some of you may know that my family and I live on a farmstead, and the experience has so many wonderful benefits. One of the hardest things to deal with is losing an animal. We have lost many chickens, a couple goats. We've also lost a cat of 16 years, and last year we lost our dog of 11 years. Experiencing more loss doesn't make it easier to deal with. I know my children have a really hard time with that. Losing pets and animals is difficult. Losing family members is so much harder to overcome. Losing someone who means a lot to you, such as a parent or best friend, can really take a toll on your faith. How can a loving God allow such a painful thing to happen to his faithful? But in order to understand why, we really need to comprehend the meaning of life on earth in contrast with eternity in heaven. We'll never learn to process the concept of loss if we believe that death means it's over. I pray that this vlog will provide you comfort, reminding you that God is always there to wrap his arms around us in times of loss, guiding us out of our darkness and toward the truth of salvation. I pray that you also find guidance in the books that we suggest in the book brief section, and of course that of this month's featured author. Yes, it's featured author time. So let me pass you on to fellow Catholic Teen Books author Leslea Wahl so you can find out who this month's featured author is.
Thank you, TM. Okay, so we are extremely blessed to have our newest Catholic Teen Books member, author Amanda Lauer, with us today discussing the topic of loss. Amanda has been an avid reader and history buff since childhood. She is an author, journalist, professional proofreader, copy editor, actress, and screenwriter. And she fulfilled a lifelong goal with the publication of her debut novel, A World Such as Heaven Intended, in 2014. The second book in Lauer's Heaven Intended Civil War trilogy, A Life Such as Heaven Intended, was published in 2018. And A Love Such as Heaven Intended was published this past April. This award-winning and best-selling wholesome romance series was inspired by the true story of a Civil War hero. And a little side note, I have read all these books and just really recommend them. They're really wonderful. Anyway, since the debut of her novel, 20,000 plus copies of Lauer's books have been sold or downloaded. A Hollywood movie studio has extended a contract to Lauer to produce and direct a feature film based on A World Such as Heaven Intended. How cool is that? So Amanda and her husband John have been married 38 years and are residents of Appleton, Wisconsin. They are involved in their church and community and travel extensively for business and pleasure. They are the proud parents of 4 adult children, have a son-in-law and daughter-in-law, and are grandparents to 3 grandsons and 3 granddaughters. So here's Amanda.
I wrote a series of books for young adults called the Heaven Intended series that deals with the war and is based on a true story. The first book is A World Such as Heaven Intended and stars Amara, who's 17 years old at the start of the book, and Nathan. And this follows their adventures, basically, and the ups and downs as they live with the Civil War, day in and day out. The second book in the series is A Life Such as Heaven Intended, which is set in the same time frame, a different couple. And the third book is A Love Such as Heaven Intended. I want to focus on A World Such as Heaven Intended, the first book in this series, because there was so much loss that these people had to deal with, as you can imagine, during a time of war. And that's really the heart of the topic today, is loss. And even though we aren't in a civil war in the United States right now, people still have loss they deal with on a daily basis. And Amara, her background is she was from a middle-class family. Her father owned a business. She had a life that she really enjoyed and was in a boarding school in Atlanta when her mother unexpectedly passed away. That was a huge loss for her. And then to make things even worse, she was forced to leave her school because her father remarried immediately after her mother died and had a stepdaughter who took Amara's place at the school, and he couldn't afford to send both of them. When the war started, there was loss continually as she would check the sheets in the town square every day to see what men were missing in action or had been killed or were injured. And she decided to help. And so she volunteered to work at her uncle's hospital in downtown Atlanta. And of course, she had to deal with loss on a continual basis there because she grew attached to the men and not everyone survived. And one particular man that she grew attached to was Nathan. And Nathan was from the eastern United States, and he had his own tragedies to deal with. When his mom died, his dad shipped him and all his younger brothers and sisters halfway across the United States to live on a ranch with his sister and brother-in-law. So he lost his schoolmates, his friends, his way of life. But he makes the best of it and eventually buys a ranch with a friend down in Texas when the war breaks out. Unfortunately, he and his friend were conscripted to fight against their will for the South. Because he's injured, he ends up in the hospital where Amara is working, and they start to develop a relationship. But he knew that it wasn't going to go where Amara wanted it to go because he knew his background. Basically, when Amara finds out what happens with him, it's another loss to her that's just very hard to handle. But both she and Nathan had their faith throughout this story, and Amara prayed the rosary throughout the day to handle the things that she had to deal with on a daily basis. And a couple of Bible verses that deal with loss were important to them and resonated with them. They may resonate with you as well. The first one is Jeremiah 29:11. I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. Another one is Joshua 1:9. Be strong and of good courage. Be not frightened, neither be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. They held on to their faith through the most difficult times and were able to come out on top in the end. Every day they strove to be a better version of themselves. And it's what I would encourage you to do. Like I mentioned, we're not in the middle of a civil war, but there's a lot of loss that people have to deal with, whether it's friendships or even loved ones who pass away. So I want to encourage you to have strength. And another Bible verse that might help is Deuteronomy 31:6. Be strong and of good courage. Do not fear or be in dread of them, for it is the Lord your God who goes with you. He will not fail you or forsake you. So take care, and hopefully you'll read the Heaven Intended series and find hope for your future and enjoy this series, and take care. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Loss can often leave an ache in our hearts, so I hope that the titles we suggest today will help heal that wound. For example, in Corinna Turner's Mandy Lamb and the Full Moon, you meet the character James, who has lost his family and his normal life, and he's still struggling to come to terms with it. Vincent, another friend of Mandy's, is similarly dealing with loss, though he's further along the road of acceptance. And in a sense, Mandy has also suffered because she's experiencing the loss of the normal humanity that should have been hers. In another one of Corinna Turner's stories is Brothers, and this is a great example reflecting the struggle of loss. This short story is part of her I Am Margaret series, and in it Joe loses his family when he's forced to flee and leave them behind. Later in the book, Kyle loses someone very dear to him to death and ends the book struggling to come to terms with that. And finally, in my own novel, The Destiny of Sunshine Ranch, Micah, the newest kid to arrive at the Credence home, just lost his grandfather, and this is after him losing his parents. It's an awful situation, and yet his faith keeps him strong. However, it's Benedict who just doesn't get it. His own parents neglected him, leaving him feeling empty and rejected naturally. So he doesn't get how Micah, who loses so much goodness and love, can still be so devoted to God. So those are my suggestions. Leslea, what do you have lined up?
Thanks, TM. That's a great list. And as always, I have a few suggestions of my own. The first, which I only have on my phone, so we'll see if we can get a picture of it, The Other Side of Freedom by Cynthia T. Toney. This is a middle grade historic fiction, and the main character Sal suffers a devastating loss when he loses his uncle Enzo due to Enzo having to escape the wrath of the Italian mob. And then I have Rightfully Ours by Carolyn Astfalk. The main character Paul suffers an unexpected loss when his father, which is his only surviving parent, is killed in the line of duty. The course of Paul's life radically changes, leaving him to forge a friendship with Rachel and forcing him to wrestle with what he believes about love. My last suggestion is my own book, Where You Lead. The main character, Eve, helps her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Grant, who is struggling with her faith after the loss of her husband and son. Loss has a way of leaving us feeling empty. It has a way of wrapping around us like a tight blanket, smothering us and leaving us in the dark. It has a way of taking control. In author C.S. Lewis's A Grief Observed, which is a collection of notes and letters about the death of his wife, he explains in profound ways the depths to which loss takes us. But in his words there is hope. He writes, "We were promised sufferings. They were part of the program. We were even told, 'Blessed are they that mourn,' and I accept it. I've got nothing that I hadn't bargained for. Of course it is different when the thing happens to oneself, not to others, and in reality, not imagination." That's so true and so beautiful. Scripture reminds us, too, that we were made to overcome the pains of loss, that while we don't have to forget those that we've lost, we can still survive the agony. We can still move forward into the light. We have hope in the knowledge that for us and for the ones that we've lost, it's not over. Through Christ, we have eternal life. Well, that's it. Thanks for joining us for Faith Through Fiction. Until next time, check out more of our exciting, edifying titles on CatholicTeenBooks.com. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and sign up for our monthly newsletter. From me, Leslea Wahl, and fellow Catholic Teen Books author T.M. Gaouetter, God bless.